I've been talking about how the best way to go after Barack Obama is to go after him from the left, unlike Harold Ford Jr., who thinks, you know what, these Democrats are just too liberal. Unreal. Anyway, and in that context, I've talked about Howard Dean and how he's now seen as far left when I think, in fact, he's centrist. And we talked about Bernie Sanders in the context of health care and how he actually gave in as well and agreed to all these compromises that he earlier had seemed to indicate that he would not give in to. So I want to bring on somebody from Vermont to talk about these issues, familiar with Bernie Sanders and Howard Dean, and has worked with both of them in the past. He's John Odom. He's the publisher of the Vermont political website, greenmountaindaily.com. John, welcome to the Young Turks.
Be here. Thanks for having me.
All right, we're really glad to have you here. Let me start with Bernie Sanders and healthcare first. How disappointed were you that Bernie Sanders eventually gave in on the public option and did not insist on one?
Well, you know, first thing I'm going to do is change the tense of your sentence there from were to are. I'm pretty disappointed. It's not a big surprise. I had actually interviewed him for Green Mountain Daily a couple months back. It was a great interview. He had a lot of good stuff to say. He had a lot of good information on a lot of the parts of the bill at the time that were, you know, developing, and that many of which ended up in the final bill that were positive things that weren't getting much coverage. But I did try to pin him down on the pledge, on the public option pledge, and he wasn't biting. And you know, that was the first indication. So you know, pretty disappointed. But it's a strange dynamic up here, where, you know, there's a lot of very strong progressive, you know, activists. There's a vibrant third party here, the Progressive Party, which Bernie was involved in the genesis of, and I have to, full disclosure, admit that my disappointment is not, as we say, as widely shared as I might like. Not to say that I'm alone, but it is disappointing, and it is an irony to see him essentially switch ideological places on this issue with Howard Dean.
Yeah, that is interesting. So that leads us to Howard Dean, because, you know, Bernie Sanders was clearly on the left of Howard Dean before. How did Howard Dean get on Bernie Sanders' left, and whose fault is that, or to whose credit does that go? Let me start that way.
Well, you know, some of this is simply the dynamics of one is in office and one is not. Mm-hmm. And obviously, when you're out of office, you can say all kinds of stuff. But yeah, it goes deeper than that. I mean, Dean was governor. I mean, a lot of the rise of both the Progressive Party and then, by association, to an extent, Bernie Sanders, came in as a reaction against Howard Dean in Vermont, who was very centrist. Some of us would say very conservative, and in fact, he was aggressively so. He would challenge the left. He would openly mock the left from time to time, and the left would, you know, snarl right back at him. It was I'm sorry. Let me jump in there, John. This is when Howard Dean was the governor of Vermont, and you're saying he was openly derisive of the left. Can you give me some examples of that? What was the conflict about? Well, he came in as a sort of budget slasher, and he went right after virtually, you know, every prized social program you can think of. He went after. He did some heavy cutting into prescription drugs, into, you know, assistance for seniors. He got on the bad side of the unions, going after state employees and going after teacher retirement funds. And at the same time, he also then initiated a lot of still controversial programs for business incentives that aren't very transparent and aren't very accountable, and pump millions into, you know, very typical stuff that you see states incentivizing businesses to move in. So that sort of thing, and some of the rhetoric that went along with it. But healthcare in particular, he oversaw, well, not quite oversaw, but he was, you know, he was here during the some very progressive healthcare programs that Vermont got passed, as far as prescription drug assistance and coverage for children, but that those were essentially done instead of single payer. There was a big push for single payer in the early 90s, and he was actually openly, you know, commenting about how this is, you know, the kind of thing you see failed in Eastern Europe, you know, a lot of the sort of things you hear Republicans say now. So, and Bernie, of course, largely grew to popularity on the basis of that issue, on the basis of health care for all. So it is really ironic, and there has been a switch, and Not as much, possibly, as I describe. I think in the case of Dean, he was, the rhetoric between him and the left got so heated. I think a lot of that polarization was interpersonal more than, didn't really go below skin deep. So once he gets away from that, once he starts running for president, it becomes a little easier for him to find common ground with the left. In Bernie's case, it's really hard to say. I think Bernie is, all of this rises and falls on whether you see this bill as potentially doing more harm than good. And Bernie has clearly decided that he sees it as doing more good than harm. And I think he's mistaken, and I'm disappointed that he doesn't feel that way. But it's hard necessarily to characterize him as switching ideologically. But he has certainly dropped out of the sort of progressive warrior mode that he used to be in when he first got elected, where he would have stood firm on that line.
You see, on Bernie Sanders, I think, and on health care, there's two questions involved. One is, what you mentioned there is, does do more good than harm. The second thing is, how do you make the bill better? And I think that he would have been better served if he just stuck to his ground. And if he had, and if him and Feingold and Sherrod Brown, et cetera, had said, no, that's it, public option or bust, then they would have had to change the bill, because Rahm Emanuel and Barack Obama were not going to walk away with no bill. So.
Well, absolutely. And I think this is where, you want to call Bernie naive, except he can't be naive. He's been up there for so long, so you don't know what's going on. I mean, without some kind of meaningful cost control, he, we're obviously, and I don't need to tell you this or your listeners, but we're putting ourselves at the mercy of the insurance companies. And sure, you look at the people like Bernie who are promoting this. If everything goes right up and down the line, if the insurance companies, instead of going for the most greedy option, or the most greedy way of doing business, go for the second or third, if the Medicare committee changes the fee-for-service structure, if all this goes just right, then yeah, okay, maybe it will be better. But come on, I mean, look at who we're dealing with.
Right, of
and
course.
Bernie, of all people, should know who he's dealing with and should know better, because he's been talking about him and educating Vermonters for years.
We're talking to John Odom. He's the publisher of the Vermont website, greenmountaindaily.com. And, John, I want to go back to Howard Dean here, because I find that absolutely fascinating. I think, so that idea that Howard Dean was considered conservative in Vermont back then, that's not a myth. That's absolutely true, that in Vermont he was seen as far as Democrats go, certainly, more on the right than on the left.
Oh, absolutely true. There are people who were, Democratic former office holders who still hold that against him. I've got one of my front pagers at Green Mountain Daily will grumble if we refer too much, still a little bit, if we refer to Dean as a liberal. He's a veteran of those wars. So, it's completely true, and a lot of it is, again, a lot of it is because he did take a particularly, he's famously blunt. Now, we think of his bluntness as being sort of in the context of, or maybe in the service of, a progressive agenda. Now, imagine that bluntness from the other direction coming right at you.
And I can understand that, but look, that's the thing. He's pragmatic, and what was interesting in telling is when they had the penultimate compromise, which was the Medicare buy-in. Dean wasn't like, oh no, we have to hold on to the public option no matter what. He said, okay, I'll take it, right? Because he was willing to make a deal. He's willing to be pragmatic. He's et cetera, et cetera. My problem is, it seems that Dean is in the same exact place, but that the country is moved so far to the right that Dean goes from being center-right Democrat to be seen as the most liberal Democrat.
Well, I think there's a lot of truth to that. I mean, he has shifted a bit on some issues, not as dramatically as it seems. A lot of it is that, getting out of that pressure cooker, getting out of that sort of political war zone that he was in so often against the left in Vermont, and then getting out of Vermont, actually, where he finds a certain acceptance from the progressive, community writ large. And he is a pragmatic guy. And, I mean, let's face it, a lot of these things we're talking about, the public option and, back when he was running for president, the whole issue of Iraq, I mean, these are all, it puts the lie to the notion of, pragmatism versus centrism. These are pragmatic policies, and he's a pragmatic guy. And getting out of that war zone, he finds himself pragmatically as, more or less what we call a progressive. It was very organic and very natural, and it makes a lot of sense.
Right. I just don't see that he's changed any of the positions. That's the thing. Because if you do, if you pull a Harold Ford and one day you're pro-choice, pro-life, the next day you're pro-choice. One day you're in favor of George W. Bush and military tribunals. Next day you're claimed to be the liberal guy running in the campaign in New York. That all seems fishy, and all of a sudden you're a Yankees fan, right? Even though you're from Tennessee. But I don't see that in Dean. If anything, I see maybe subtle shifts. But to me, he seems to be in a very similar spot that he was before. Because, in the end, he didn't really argue for single payer even. He argued for the public option and then Medicare buy-in.
Right. Well, and he has spoken favorably of the single payer option, and that's new. That's different. But his strategies for getting there mirror what he did in Vermont. So, in terms of where the rubber hits the road, you're absolutely right. He hasn't really changed. His to a large extent, his style has changed, and some of us would say he's just grown. But he's always been a pragmatic guy and a wicked smart guy. I tell you.
All right. Now, so look, as a final note here to everybody listening, I'm not worried about Dean as much as I'm worried about the country. My problem is that the country has moved so far to the right that Dean appears to be on the left when, everything. And now, as I said, the country got pulled so far to the right, somehow it pulled Sanders to the right of Dean. And that's a very troubling phenomenon. All right. John Odom is the publisher of GreenMountainDaily.com. Thank you so much for joining us, John. Really appreciate it.
That was a blast. Thanks for having me.
All right. We'll be right back.